Hello everyone. I am the Midnight Storyteller and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. The light in the window wasn't mine. My name is Lucas Hartwell. I moved into this neighborhood 2 months ago after inheriting my grandfather's old townhouse. It sat on the edge of a quiet cul-de-sac, where the streetlights buzzed and flickered like dying fireflies. Every house around me looked normal: trimmed hedges, parked cars, porch lights. All except the one directly across from me. It had been empty for years, according to the neighbors. No one went in. No one came out. Except one night, a light turned on in the upstairs window. I remember it vividly. It was 2:14 a.m. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs for water. As I passed my living room window, I saw it, a pale yellow glow beaming out through torn curtains. I froze. I stared at it for minutes. There was no movement, no silhouette, no sound. Just that eerie, still light. The next morning, it was off. Curiosity gnawed at me. I asked the old woman next door, Mrs. Elwood, if someone had finally moved in. No, she said. That house is dead. Been dead for 15 years. What do you mean, dead? She just shook her head, muttered something about a fire, and hurried back inside. That night, I stayed up. I turned off all my lights, sat in the dark, and waited by the window. At exactly 2:14 a.m., the upstairs light flicked on again. This time, I saw a shadow move past the curtain. I swear it looked like a person, tall, slow, deliberate. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, that I was just projecting fears into a dark window. But something in my gut told me this wasn't normal. The third night, the light came on again. And this time, the shadow was staring directly at me. I ducked under the window the second I felt its gaze. My heart thundered in my chest like it was trying to claw its way out. I told myself I was imagining things, that I couldn't have seen it staring directly at me from across the street. But the pressure in the room had changed. It felt like the air itself had thickened. My living room grew colder, like someone had opened a door to something ancient and wrong. I stayed crouched for what felt like hours, eyes glued to the bottom edge of the window, waiting for a sign that the figure had left. At 2:33 a.m., the light flicked off. The room across the street went dark again. Still, I didn't move. I couldn't. My limbs refused to listen to me. My body didn't trust that whatever I'd seen was truly gone. The next day, I tried to shake it off. Told myself it was some local prankster. Maybe kid sneaking into the place for a laugh. That night, I even planned to ignore it entirely. I closed my blinds, took 2 sleeping pills, and got into bed before midnight. But at exactly 2:14 a.m., I woke up. No sound, no alarm, no nightmare. Just an overwhelming sense that something was wrong. I didn't want to get up. But I had to. My body moved on its own, like something was pulling invisible strings. I crept to the living room window and peeked through the blinds. The light was on again. But this time, it wasn't just the upper window. The downstairs hallway in the abandoned house was also glowing faintly, casting long shadows across the porch. Then, the front door creaked open, slow, deliberate, like it had been waiting to move. And someone stepped outside. I couldn't see their face, only a silhouette. Tall. Thin. Barefoot. They just stood there, in the middle of the porch, facing my house. Then, they raised one hand. Not to wave. to point directly at me. I stumbled back from the window, nearly tripping over the coffee table. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. I didn't dare look again. Whoever, whatever, that figure was, it had seen me. Not just in the general direction. It knew exactly where I stood. I scrambled upstairs and locked my bedroom door, even though it felt ridiculous. It was across the street. It couldn't get in here. That's what I kept telling myself as I curled up under the covers like a child. But sleep never came. I lay there for hours, heart pounding, straining to hear footsteps that never came. Morning light brought no comfort. I paced the house until noon, then finally worked up the courage to go outside. The abandoned house stood silent. No lights. No shadow. No signs that its front door had ever opened. Still, I crossed the street. My legs felt like lead as I walked up the weed-choked path to the porch. The boards groaned under my feet. The door was shut tight. I reached out, hand trembling, and tried the knob. Locked. But something had definitely come out last night. I could feel it in the wood, in the air, in my chest. I turned away, about to step back off the porch, when I noticed something wedged in the crack of the doorframe. A piece of paper. It was folded, yellowed, and damp with morning dew. I pulled it out and unfolded it slowly, like it might bite. One word was written in jagged, red ink, "Tonight." That was it. No signature. No explanation. Just a promise. I backed away from the house, heart pounding harder than ever. My instincts screamed at me to leave, to get in my car and drive until this place was nothing but a fading dot in the rearview mirror. But I didn't. Instead, I went back home. And waited for the sun to go down. The hours dragged like weights chained to my ankles. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind outside made me flinch. I didn't eat. I didn't turn on the TV. I just watched the clock, feeling time stretch and twist until it barely made sense anymore. At 9 p.m., I boarded up my windows. It felt insane, but I didn't care. I nailed thick planks across the living room panes, the sound echoing like gunshots through the quiet street. I didn't stop until every window facing that cursed house was covered. At 10:45, I turned off all the lights and sat in the middle of my kitchen floor, clutching the largest kitchen knife I owned. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. And then, silence. Not the usual kind. This was different. The hum of the refrigerator stopped. The heater died. The clock on the microwave went black. Power outage. My phone still worked. I checked the time. 2:13 a.m. My heart nearly stopped. Then, something scratched against my front door. Slow. Deliberate. Wood against metal. I stood frozen, not breathing. The scratching stopped. And then, 3 knocks. I didn't move. I couldn't. Another 3 knocks, louder this time. Almost angry. Then, the door handle turned. I let out a strangled gasp. But the deadbolt held. Thank God I'd locked it. The handle twisted back and forth with growing frustration, then suddenly stopped. I leaned closer to the door, stupidly drawn to the sound. That's when I heard it. A voice. Whispering. From the other side. Soft. Wrong. Like it was speaking through water. I pressed my ear to the wood, heart screaming at me to run. It whispered my name. Not screamed. Not growled. Just gently whispered, like someone who'd known me forever. Lucas. And then, it began to laugh. The laugh was quiet, but it burrowed into my ears like a worm. It wasn't human. It tried to be, but there was something broken about it. Like someone was imitating laughter without understanding why people laugh at all. I backed away from the door slowly, knife still gripped tight in my shaking hand. Then, silence again. For a moment, I let myself believe it was over. That was a mistake. The door shook violently, once, like something had slammed against it. The walls shuddered. A picture frame fell in the hallway behind me and shattered. I let out a cry and ran upstairs, skipping steps. I locked myself in the bedroom, pushed a dresser in front of the door, and sat in the corner, eyes wide and unblinking. Then, footsteps. Inside the house. Slow. Measured. Bare feet on wood floors. Coming up the stairs. I held my breath, praying I was imagining it. The sound reached the top step. Then, nothing. Minutes passed. My heartbeat thundered in my ears, drowning out everything. Then, tap, tap, tap. Fingernails. On my bedroom door. I stared at the knob, waiting for it to turn. It didn't. Instead, something slid under the door. I squinted through the dark, stomach clenching. Another paper. I crawled forward, not wanting to touch it but needing to know. One word again. Open. I didn't. I stayed crouched there until dawn, clutching the knife, the note burning in my hand like it carried something alive. When sunlight finally crept into the room, I stood up on shaking legs and slowly moved the dresser aside. The hallway was empty. The house was silent. I crept downstairs, and found the front door still locked. Still bolted. But there were footprints. Wet. Bare. Leading from the door, into the house. The footprints were fresh, still damp, still glistening in the morning light that spilled through cracks in the boarded windows. I followed them across the floor, heart hammering, mouth dry. They didn't make sense. There were no prints leading to the door, only from it. As if something hadn't entered the house, but appeared inside it. The trail led into the hallway, past the stairs, and stopped at the basement door. I stared at that door for what felt like an hour. I didn't want to open it. Every instinct in me screamed not to. But something had changed in the air. It felt aware. Like the house was waiting to see what I would do. I couldn't live like this anymore. I needed answers, or closure. Or maybe I just needed to feel like I had some control over my own life again. So I opened the basement door. It groaned on rusty hinges, revealing a steep staircase descending into blackness. The air down there was wrong, thick, damp, cold in a way that felt ancient. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and began to descend, one shaky step at a time. The basement was empty. Just old shelves, dust, and cobwebs. Until I saw the door. It wasn't supposed to be there. Built into the far wall, rough wood, arched like something medieval. No handle. Just a ring of rusted iron, and a symbol carved into the wood, a circle with a vertical line through it. And it was open. Just slightly. Enough to see the darkness inside. A darkness that seemed to move. I stepped closer. The air smelled like earth and rot and something else, like burned hair and wet stone. My flashlight flickered. I turned to leave, panic rising like bile. When I heard a whisper drift from the open door. Stay. It wasn't a threat. It was a plea. Soft. Sad. terribly human. And that's when I realized, there might be more than one thing in that house. Some things that want in. And others that are begging not to be let out. I backed away from the door slowly, careful not to make a sound. The whisper still echoed in my head, "Stay," and for a moment, I swear I felt something else behind those words. Like it wasn't meant for me. Like it was meant for the thing that had been walking through my house. I reached the top of the stairs and slammed the basement door shut. Then I pushed the hallway dresser in front of it, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the edges. Whatever was down there. I didn't want it coming up. I didn't sleep. Again. That morning, I called the local records office. I needed to know more about the house across the street, what happened there, why it was left abandoned for so long. They sent me what little they had. The house had belonged to a man named Everett Kane. A retired professor. He lived there alone for decades. Then, one day in 2009, he just disappeared. Neighbors reported strange sounds in the nights leading up to it, chanting, scratching, lights turning on and off. Police broke in but found nothing. No body. No signs of struggle. Just one thing on the wall of the basement, that same symbol I saw on the hidden door, carved deep into the brick. A circle with a vertical line. When I asked the woman on the phone what it meant, she hesitated. Then she whispered, "Don't speak about that symbol aloud. People say it listens." That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat in the middle of my living room, knife beside me, eyes darting to the boarded windows every few seconds. Then, at exactly 2:14 a.m., a knock. Not at the door this time. At the back window. A soft knock, like fingernails. Then another. And another. All around the house. Tapping, rapping, scraping. And then, from inside the walls. Lucas, it knew my name. It was inside the house again. And this time, I wasn't alone. The whisper came from behind the living room wall, inside it. I stood frozen, staring at the wallpaper as if it might peel back on its own. Then the sound came again. Closer. Like someone crawling inside the drywall. Slow, dragging limbs, nails scraping wood. I grabbed my knife and ran to the kitchen, every hair on my body standing on end. But as I reached for the back door, I stopped. The door was already unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. My shaking hand reached for the knob, but before I could touch it, knock. 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 From inside the door. I backed away, knife trembling in my grip. Then something slid under the gap. Not paper this time. A photograph. Old. Faded. Sepia-toned. I picked it up carefully, heart pounding. It was a picture of my living room. Not from today, decades ago. Same layout, same fireplace, but the furniture was different. The room was full of people in dark, old-fashioned clothes. Their faces were blurred, all except one. A man standing in the center. Tall. Thin. Barefoot. Smiling directly at the camera. He was holding something in his hand. It was a note. I squinted at the tiny writing. "Let me in." Then I heard the boards on my living room windows creak. Not from wind. From pressure. Something was pushing on them. I turned back to the kitchen door just in time to see the lock turn on its own. And slowly, deliberately, the door began to open. I slammed it shut with every ounce of strength I had, locked it, bolted it, shoved the refrigerator in front of it. Then I ran upstairs, again, this time into the attic, the only place left that felt safe. I sat against the wall, clutching the photo, the knife, and the growing realization that I was being worn down. It didn't want to kill me. It wanted me to give up. To open the door myself. And in that moment, a chilling thought struck me. What if I already had? The attic was cold. Not the kind of cold that came from drafty wood or poor insulation. This was the kind that lived in the bones of a place. I curled up near an old trunk, every creak of the house below slicing through the silence like a blade. I kept replaying that thought. What if I already let it in? Had I missed something? The night I found the note that said, "Tonight." The moment I opened the basement door. The first time I looked directly at the light in the window. Maybe that was all it needed, attention. Acknowledgement. An invitation wasn't always verbal. Sometimes, it was curiosity. That's when I noticed something strange. The old trunk behind me, it was open just a crack. I hadn't touched it. I leaned closer, carefully lifting the heavy lid. Inside were dusty books, black and white photos, and a journal. On the first page, in handwriting that looked like it had been carved in desperation, were the words, "If you found this, it means it wants you too." The journal belonged to Everett Kane, the man who disappeared from the house across the street. I flipped through trembling pages. Most entries were rambling nonsense, words repeated over and over, ink smeared like blood. But one entry stood out. It was dated a week before he vanished. It moves at night. It watches through windows. It mimics voices and faces. But it cannot create its own. That's why it needs us. The symbol keeps it at bay, but only if you believe in it. Once doubt creeps in, it weakens. And when it weakens, it listens. Whatever you do, do not let it make you speak its name. I turned the page. Just one word was written, scrawled in massive, red ink strokes that covered the entire paper. Erased. The moment I read it, a whisper, soft and hungry, filled the attic air. Yes. The attic seemed to shiver around me. That name, Erased, echoed inside my skull like it had been waiting in silence, just for me to say it. Not aloud. Just seeing it, knowing it, was enough. A low thrum filled the house. Not a sound, exactly, more like a vibration in the walls. Like the wood itself was breathing. Then, my phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a notification, unknown number, one new voicemail. My stomach twisted. I hadn't heard it ring. Hands trembling, I put the phone to my ear and pressed play. At first, nothing. Then static. Then, my own voice. Panicked. Breathy. Whispering. He's watching. Through the walls. Through the cracks. He wears faces. Don't sleep. Don't let him. The message cut off. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. I hadn't recorded that. I hadn't said any of that. And yet, it was me. Then the floorboards beneath me creaked. Heavy. Deliberate. Something was in the house. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Another creak, closer now. Moving toward the attic stairs. Then a sound I'll never forget. Laughter. But not like before. This time it was clearer. And it was my laughter. Echoing through the house in a twisted mockery. Then a whisper under it, layered like a dozen voices stacked on top of each other, all saying the same thing. You are already home. The attic bulb flickered and burst with a sharp pop. I was plunged into darkness. And in that dark, something breathed right next to my ear. The breath against my ear was warm and wet, too real to be imagined. I lunged backward, crashing into the trunk, flashlight tumbling from my hand. In the pitch dark, I could hear it, breathing. Slow. Calm. Like it had all the time in the world. Then it spoke. But not in my voice this time. It used my mother's. "It's okay, honey. Open your eyes." My blood turned to ice. My mother had died 3 years ago. "Let me see you. Just once." I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. I squeezed my eyes tighter, tears leaking from the corners. Somewhere inside me, I knew, if I opened my eyes now, I wouldn't survive it. Not as me, at least. The voice changed again. Now it was Everett Kane's. Raspy. Broken. I opened the door. I thought I could survive it. I was wrong. Then silence. When I finally opened my eyes, the attic was empty again. The air felt lighter. But something was wrong, off in a way I couldn't explain. I climbed down from the attic slowly, one step at a time, listening. Nothing. Until I reached the bottom floor. And noticed something that made my legs nearly give out. All the boards on the windows were gone. No nails. No broken wood. Just gone. And worse, the front door was wide open. I stared at it, heart pounding, waiting for movement. Then I heard footsteps. From behind me. I spun around. There, standing at the end of the hallway, was a figure. Tall. Thin. Barefoot. But this time, it looked exactly like me. Same clothes. Same face. Same terrified expression. We locked eyes. And then it smiled. A slow, unnatural curl of lips that weren't mine, even though they wore my face. That smile didn't belong on my face. It was too wide, too slow, as if the muscles had learned the motion secondhand. The thing, the mimic, stood perfectly still, watching me, studying me the way a predator studies prey it has already caught. I couldn't breathe. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I backed into the living room, knife still in my grip, though it felt useless now. What could a blade do against something wearing me? The mimic tilted its head, as if curious. Then it spoke. "You're tired. I can help." Its voice was my voice, but softer, like I was hearing myself through a dream. "Let me in. Let me be you. You don't have to feel this anymore." I wanted to scream. To run. But something about its presence pulled at me. Like gravity. Like inevitability. Like I'd already lost, and this was just a formality. It took one step forward. That broke the spell. I turned and sprinted toward the basement, insane, I know, but it was the only place I'd seen it hesitate. That hidden door, that symbol. If Everett was right, maybe it still held some power. I burst through the basement door, stumbled down the stairs, and slammed the hidden door shut behind me. The iron ring echoed like a funeral bell in the stone chamber beyond. Then I turned around. And froze. The chamber was different. Larger than before. Endless. Walls stretching into darkness. The symbol on the floor glowing faintly with a dull, red light. At its center, another figure. Not the mimic. Not human. Tall. Towering. Its face hidden beneath a veil of shadows, body wrapped in robes that moved like smoke. It spoke without sound, and I heard it inside my mind. "You have seen it. You have named it. Now you must choose." The mimic's footsteps echoed behind me, descending the stairs. I turned back to the entity in the chamber. And whispered, "Choose what?" Its answer came like thunder through my skull, "Who walks out as you?" The air thickened, like syrup in my lungs, as the chamber pulsed with unseen energy. The glowing symbol beneath me flickered, as if reacting to something behind me. The mimic was getting closer. I turned to face it, now just at the foot of the stairs. Its face, my face, was calm. Serene. But its eyes were all wrong. Black. Bottomless. Not angry. Not cruel. Just empty. Like a reflection that never had anything behind it. "You're unraveling," it said softly, almost kindly. "You don't belong here anymore." "But I do." The robed figure at the center of the chamber raised a hand, and I felt the ground beneath me crack slightly. A low hum shook the space, deep and ancient. It was waiting for my decision. Let the mimic take my place and leave. Or fight to remain myself, knowing it might already be too late. The mimic stepped forward again. "Why suffer? Why bleed, ache, hide? Let me carry it all. You'll forget the fear. The loneliness." I clenched my jaw. "No," its smile faded. "Then you will die here. Alone. Like the others." The entity behind me boomed again, not in sound, but through the structure of the chamber. The mimic hissed at it, like smoke fleeing fire. And I understood. The symbol wasn't just protection. It was choice. I stepped forward into the glowing circle, holding Everett's journal in one hand and the knife in the other. The mimic lunged. The chamber reacted. The circle flared bright red, and suddenly, time slowed. I saw the mimic mid-stride, mouth open, too wide to be mine, eyes now boiling pits of black flame. The entity's voice echoed in me again, "One stays. One becomes." Then, silence. And a blinding flash of light. When the light faded, I was no longer standing. I was lying on the cold floor of the chamber, the journal scorched beside me, the knife twisted and blackened like it had been struck by lightning. My ears rang with silence, thick, crushing, absolute. I sat up slowly. The mimic was gone. So was the entity. And the circle had vanished, no glowing lines, no markings, just smooth stone beneath me. I climbed the stairs, heart heavy with dread. The house above was quiet again. Too quiet. Like a stage after a play's final scene. I stepped into the living room. Everything was normal. The boarded windows were back in place. The front door was locked. My phone sat on the kitchen table, its battery somehow fully charged. For a fleeting moment, I wondered, had it all been a dream? Then I looked into the hallway mirror. And froze. It was me. My face. My eyes. But the reflection blinked a second too late. Like it had to remember what blinking was. I moved my hand. The reflection followed, perfectly. Then smiled. But I hadn't smiled. The realization hit me like ice water. I had won, but something had still changed. I wasn't just me anymore. The mimic hadn't taken over. But a piece of it had remained. Or maybe I had left a piece of myself behind in that chamber. And now, every time I passed a mirror, I could feel it watching. Not from the other side. From within. And at night, when I try to sleep, sometimes I hear it whisper. Soon. Days passed. I tried to return to a routine. Shopping, cleaning, pretending. I even went back to work, nodding through meetings, laughing at things I didn't find funny. But I wasn't there. Not really. Something about me had shifted. People noticed. "You look tired. Are you feeling okay? You seem different." I'd smile. Tell them I was just adjusting to the new house. But their eyes lingered a little too long. Because I think they could feel it, too. The thing inside me. Every night at exactly 2:14 a.m., I'd wake up. No sound. No dreams. Just the clock. Sometimes, I'd find the front door open again. Or the lights in the house across the street flickering on, even though it was still abandoned. One night, I couldn't help myself. I looked out the window. There I was. Standing across the street. Wearing my clothes. Smiling. No one believed me when I told them. Of course they didn't. But I stopped trying after that. I stopped calling for help. Stopped reaching out. Because the more I talked about it, the stronger it got. I could feel it, growing. Feeding. Off my fear. My memories. My identity. Every time I passed a mirror, I stared a little longer. Studied my own face. My own movements. Was that how I always smiled? Did my eyes always linger like that? And in the silence of the house, I began to wonder if I was still me, or if I had simply become the newest version of it. It's been 6 months. I no longer sleep through the night. I don't try to stop the door from opening at 2:14 a.m., or the whispers from crawling through the walls. I listen now. Sometimes, I even answer. The thing that once stalked me, erased, as the journal called it, no longer needs to wear my face. Because now, I wear his. I remember everything about the man I was. Lucas Hartwell. I remember his fear. His doubt. His resistance. But I no longer feel it. That part of me, his part, faded like smoke in morning light. And something else filled the empty space. Erased doesn't take over by force. It waits. Patiently. Peels layers. Observes. Mimics. And then it offers peace. A world without anxiety. Without guilt. Without identity. Just purpose. Now, I watch from the windows. I wait for others like me, the curious. The broken. The desperate. They always come. Drawn by a flickering light at 2:14 a.m. And when they do, I leave the door unlocked. Not to trap them. But to give them the same choice I was given. To open. To become. Because once you see it, once you hear your name whispered in the dark, you're already his. And when you finally stop resisting, you'll understand what I do now. The greatest horror isn't being replaced. It's realizing you were never whole to begin with. And something was always watching. Waiting. Smiling in the mirror. My name's Eric Mathers. I'm 25, and I work the overnight shift at a self-storage facility just outside the city, one of those rundown places with chain-link fences, flickering floodlights, and rows of metal doors stretching endlessly into the dark. It's not glamorous, but it pays, and the job's simple. Watch the monitors, do a patrol every hour, and make sure no one's breaking in or living inside the units. Most nights are dead quiet. Just me, the hum of the monitors, and the occasional raccoon tripping the motion sensors. Until last week. That's when unit number 237 started opening on its own. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Some units are old, and their electronic locks fail from time to time. I'd get a beeping alert, see the red, unsecured warning on the screen, and go lock it manually. But here's the thing, according to our system, Unit 237 doesn't exist. There's no listing. No payment history. No owner. Physically, it's there. A dull gray roll-up door in the middle of row C, just like all the others. But the digital record skipped straight from 236 to 238. I asked my boss about it. He shrugged. Probably a clerical error. Just make sure it stays locked. So I did. The first night, I walked over, found the door halfway up. Inside, it was pitch black. I shone my flashlight inside but didn't step in. Just a dusty concrete floor and an empty space. I pulled the door down, heard it latch, and went back to the office. 15 minutes later, it was open again. I thought maybe I hadn't shut it properly. So I went back, slammed it down hard, even padlocked it for good measure. This time, I watched the camera feed. At 2:41 a.m., the door slid open, slow and smooth. And no one was there. I stared at the screen, breath caught in my throat. The camera feed was grainy, cheap security-grade black and white, but it was clear enough. The metal door of Unit 237 slowly rolled upward, revealing the same empty darkness I'd seen earlier. No wind, no raccoons, no prankster kids. Just movement. Quiet. Purposeful. Like someone on the inside had lifted it. I froze, watching. Nothing came out. The camera buzzed slightly, static flickering for a moment. Then the feed normalized. Still empty. I grabbed my flashlight and keys, heart pounding, and jogged across the cold gravel lot to row C. The night was deathly silent. No cars, no wind, not even crickets. Just the sound of my own boots crunching the gravel. Sure enough, the door was halfway up again. I aimed my flashlight inside. Empty, at first. But then I saw it, far in the back of the unit, almost out of view, something covered in a thick gray tarp. I hadn't seen it earlier. It looked like a crate. Or maybe a large box. Curiosity got the better of me. I ducked beneath the half-open door and stepped inside. The air shifted instantly. Cold and stale, like a cellar that hadn't been opened in years. My flashlight flickered. I hesitated. Then, from behind me, clang. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed me. I spun around, fumbling for the latch, but it wouldn't budge. My radio crackled to life in my pocket, a burst of static piercing the silence. Eric. My blood froze. The voice on the other end, it was mine. I yanked the radio from my belt, staring at it like it might bite me. The static cleared for just a second, long enough for the voice, my voice, to speak again. Why'd you go inside, Eric? I didn't respond. My fingers were numb, my chest tight. The air in the unit had grown heavier somehow. Harder to breathe. My flashlight buzzed with a low whine and dimmed until I could barely see the tarp-covered object at the back. Then the voice came through again, but different now. Broken. Like it had been run through a tape recorder and slowed down. You shouldn't be here. I backed away from the crate, stumbling into the cold concrete wall behind me. I tried the latch again, useless. Then, out of instinct, I kicked the inside of the roll-up door. The sound echoed hard through the metal. I kicked again. Nothing. Then something moved under the tarp. I froze. Just a twitch. A shift. Like whatever was inside had reacted to the sound. Then a faint scrape. Something dragging against the floorboards of the crate, like long nails or fingers searching for a way out. I stepped closer, despite every instinct screaming at me to run. I reached for the edge of the tarp. Just as I touched it, the door rolled open. Bright light flooded the unit. My eyes adjusted and I saw the night supervisor, Charlie, standing there with a confused expression and a crowbar in hand. "You all right?" he asked. I turned back to the crate, but it was gone. The entire unit was empty. Charlie looked around. "Heard banging on the cameras. Thought you locked yourself in." I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. He waved it off and said, "Come on. Take a break. You're looking pale." But as I stepped out into the gravel, I saw it, a small scrap of gray tarp still lying on the ground. And etched into the concrete beneath where the crate had been was a number. 237. I didn't tell Charlie about the number. I didn't tell him about the crate. Or the voice on the radio that sounded like me. I just nodded, said I needed some air, and walked back to the office. The cameras were all calm again. Normal. Rows of quiet units under buzzing lights. No movement. No alerts. 237 showed up on the feed now, as if it had always been there. And in the logbook, I found something else that hadn't been there before, an old handwritten note in fading ink, #237, do not enter. No rental. Do not move contents. Lock at all times. No signature. No date. Just those words. I flipped through the rest of the pages. Nothing else about that unit. As if it had always been ignored on purpose. That night, I kept the door to the office locked. I watched the cameras. Drank 3 energy drinks. Didn't blink once between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m. And at exactly 2:41 a.m., the feed glitched. Unit 237's camera cut to static for 6 seconds. When it came back, the door was wide open. But this time, something was standing inside. A tall shape. Still. Silent. Too far to see clearly, but just close enough that I could tell it was facing the camera. And it looked like someone wearing a uniform. My uniform. I leaned closer to the screen. And that's when the monitor flickered again, just one frame, but I saw it. The figure had moved to the inside of the office. Behind me. I spun around. No one was there. But the door was unlocked. And the radio on my desk crackled softly with static. Just one word came through. Closer. The voice chilled me to the marrow. Not because it said the word, but because it sounded relieved. Like it had been waiting a long, long time for me to listen. I lunged for the door and slammed it shut, twisting the lock hard enough to hear it grind. My hands were slick with sweat. The air in the office was suddenly too thick, like it had stopped circulating. The walls felt smaller. Closer. I turned back to the monitor. The camera for Unit 237 was black now. Not static, just pure black. As if the feed had been swallowed by something that didn't reflect light at all. I flipped through the other camera views frantically, searching for movement. And found it. Row A. One by one, the doors were opening. Not all the way, just an inch. Like they were breathing. Row B next. Then C. Each metal door cracking open just enough to cast narrow shadows. Until only one unit remained closed. Still black on the monitor. Still silent. Then the intercom in the office buzzed to life, an old, rusty speaker we never used. It screeched once, then cleared. And my voice came through. "I see you now." I backed away from the desk, heart slamming against my ribs. "I'm coming to help. Let me take the weight." I grabbed my flashlight and the spare key set, hands trembling, and bolted from the office. I don't know why. I should have run. I wanted to run. But something in that voice pulled me forward. I passed row A. All the doors were shut again. Row B, nothing. Row C. 237 was open again. But now the crate was back. Only this time, the tarp had been pulled off. And inside was a shape, lying still, wrapped in a uniform that looked exactly like mine. I froze at the entrance of Unit 237. My flashlight trembled in my grip, its weak beam hovering over the crate. The figure inside didn't move. It was lying on its side, knees tucked to its chest, face turned away. The fabric of the uniform was wrinkled and dirty, but unmistakably mine. Same patch. Same name tag. Same boots. I wanted to believe it was a mannequin. A prank. Anything. But then it breathed. A shallow rise and fall of its back, barely perceptible, but real. I stepped backward, nearly tripping over the door's metal track. The air behind me felt suddenly different. Heavier. I turned. Standing in the middle of the row, just outside the unit, was someone else. Not moving. Barefoot. Thin. Wearing the same uniform. My flashlight flickered, struggling to hold its beam. The figure slowly raised one arm and pointed, not at me, but at the crate. Like it was telling me to look again. I did. The figure inside the crate had turned. Its eyes were open now. And it was staring directly at me. Same face. Same eyes. Same scar on my chin I'd gotten falling off my bike at 12. It whispered something. I leaned in closer, horrified and hypnotized. The lips of the figure inside the crate barely moved. But I heard it. "You're already inside." My vision blurred. I stumbled out of the unit, gasping, clutching my chest. The other figure, the one standing in the row, was gone. The storage yard was empty again. The door to 237 began to roll shut, slow and steady, as if guided by invisible hands. Peacefully. Like it was going to sleep. I didn't sleep that day. I sat in my car until my shift ended at sunrise, engine running, hands glued to the steering wheel. I couldn't bring myself to look in the rearview mirror. I was too afraid I'd see myself sitting in the back seat. When the day supervisor arrived, I quit on the spot. No explanation. Just handed over my badge and walked away. He looked surprised, but didn't press. Maybe he saw something in my eyes. Maybe he already knew. I drove home and locked every door and window. Then I sat on the couch for hours, trying to convince myself that it wasn't real. That the figure in the crate hadn't breathed. That the whisper wasn't mine. But that night, at exactly 2:41 a.m., I woke up. Alone. Or so I thought. The radio on my nightstand crackled to life. I hadn't used that thing in months. "Eric," the voice whispered. "You forgot to lock up." I shot out of bed and ran to the front door. Unlocked. Wide open. I stepped out onto my porch. The neighborhood was still, street lamps casting long yellow shadows. Then I saw it. Across the street, in the empty lot where no buildings had ever stood, stood row C. Just one row of storage units. Impossible. It couldn't be there. But it was. And Unit 237 was open. Even from a distance, I could see the crate inside. Waiting. Calling. I slammed the door shut and locked it 3 times. Then I locked it again, just to be sure. When I looked back out the window, the row of storage units across the street was gone, like it had never been there at all. Just empty grass and cracked pavement under the buzzing glow of the streetlights. But I knew what I'd seen. And I knew what it meant. Unit 237 wasn't just at the facility. It was following me. That realization settled into my chest like a cold stone. I tried calling Charlie the next morning, just to hear a voice from that place, to feel less alone. The number rang once, then played a disconnected tone. Gone. Like the whole facility had been erased. I even drove back out there, heart pounding. Where the chain link fence used to be, where everything used to be, there was nothing but tall weeds and a rusted, "For sale" sign half buried in dirt. The gravel lot? Gone. No tire tracks. No gate. Just space. As if the land had never been touched. I left. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Instead, I moved. Far away. Different state. Different life. Got a job at a gas station, day shifts only. I kept my head down. Tried to forget. And it worked, for a while. Until last night. I was closing up. It was a little past 2:30 a.m. when the lights in the back aisle flickered. I went to check it out, thinking it was just a bad bulb. But there, in the corner of the break room, was a gray tarp. Folded neatly. Resting on a crate. My uniform folded on top. I stared at the crate, frozen in the doorway. My name tag stared back at me from the neatly folded shirt on top, Eric, embroidered in the exact crooked stitching I remembered from orientation day. I hadn't worn that uniform in months. I'd left it behind when I quit. Thrown it in the facility's dumpster without a second thought. So how was it here? I stepped closer, slow and careful, as if the air around the crate might collapse in on itself. The tarp was the same dull gray as before, thick with dust at the edges. But the crate underneath looked newer. Not aged. Not rotted. Like it had just been built. Or maybe, rebuilt. I reached out, trembling, and placed my hand on the shirt. It was warm. Not just from the room, but like someone had just worn it. Then I heard it. A low click behind me. The back door of the gas station, which I know I locked, began to creak open. I turned, and for a second, I saw nothing, then movement. A shadow stepped inside. Too dark to see a face. Too tall to be a customer. Bare feet against the linoleum, slow, steady footsteps. I backed away, bumping into the crate. The figure stopped a few feet from me. Then lifted something from the floor. A key ring. The same one I used to carry at the storage facility. The voice that followed was like sandpaper and smoke. Forgot these. And then, as it stepped into the light, it was me. Same face. Same posture. But the eyes. The eyes were hollow. Like they had seen things no human should ever see. And behind that version of me, just for a flicker, I saw a metal door. Unit 237. Open. Waiting. The crate behind me groaned. Not the wood. Something inside it. I took a step back, trapped between two impossibilities, the thing that wore my face. And the box I swore I'd never see again. The other me smiled. Not cruelly. Almost, tired. You left the door open, Eric, it said. Someone had to come through. My breath caught. I looked at the crate again, and the lid was rising. Inside wasn't just a figure anymore. It was me. Eyes wide open, body rigid, like a wax sculpture of my worst fear. It blinked once, slowly. Then whispered, "Let me rest." The version of me standing across the room dropped the key ring with a metallic clang. "You can go now." And I understood. Unit 237 wasn't a place. It was a threshold. Something ancient. Something that offered a choice to those who wandered too close to their own reflection. To their own collapse. One of us always had to stay. And one of us always walked away. I looked between the crate and the figure. Then down at my own hands. They were no longer trembling. They were still. Calm. I took a deep breath, nodded once, and walked toward the back door. The other me stepped aside, fading into shadow. The world outside was silent, still, and dark. I didn't turn back. Because I already knew, the next time Unit 237 opens, it won't be for me. It'll be for you. The end. I worked the night shift at a summer lake camp. Someone's still in cabin #6, but it was torn down years ago. My name's Josh Taylor. I took the job at Camp Echo Ridge to earn some credits over summer break. It's one of those old lakeside camps up in the Georgia mountains, quiet, remote, surrounded by trees thick enough to block out the moonlight. During the day, it's all laughter, sunblock, and canoe races. Kids playing tag between cabins, counselors in neon shirts with whistles, bug spray, and peanut butter sandwiches. But at night, the camp is something else. My shift starts at 11 p.m. The kids are already in bed, the counselors passed out from exhaustion, and I'm left to do the rounds with a flashlight, a walkie-talkie, and a printed map of the cabins. Most nights are uneventful. I check the perimeter, make sure the animals haven't gotten into the food storage, and sit in the security cabin listening to the cicadas and loons by the lake. Until 2 nights ago. At 1:17 a.m., the walkie crackled to life. Light on in cabin 6. It was a child's voice. I sat upright. That wasn't possible. Cabin 6 was destroyed in a fire 13 years ago. Burned down during a storm. Lightning strike, they said. No one was hurt, but the remains were bulldozed and replaced with a gravel clearing surrounded by tall grass. It's not on the map anymore. There is no cabin 6. I grabbed my flashlight, heart pounding. Maybe a prank. Maybe interference. I walked toward the old path that led to where it used to be. And then I saw it. A faint light, glowing through the trees. Like a lantern, swaying gently. Exactly where cabin 6 used to stand. I stood at the edge of the trail, watching that pale light bob between the trees. It was faint, almost like firelight, but steady, too steady for a flashlight or campfire. I told myself it had to be someone messing around. Maybe one of the counselors pulling a dumb prank. But no one ever talked about cabin 6, not even during daylight. It was like some silent rule around here. We all just pretended it never existed. Still, I walked toward the light. The air grew cooler the deeper I went, the night sounds fading behind me. No frogs, no insects, just the crunch of my boots and the dull hum of distant lake water. When I reached the clearing, I stopped cold. There it was. Cabin 6. Standing as if it had never burned. weathered wooden walls. A crooked porch. One window lit with a soft amber glow. Smoke rising lazily from a chimney that shouldn't exist. I approached slowly, heartbeat pounding in my ears. There were no footprints in the gravel. No signs of recent construction. Just the cabin, sitting in the middle of a forgotten place like it had waited to be found. I raised my walkie. This is Josh. Can anyone hear me? I'm at the old fire site, and there's a structure here. Please advise. Static. Then, you're not supposed to be there. The voice wasn't a child this time. It was older. Worn. And it wasn't coming from the walkie. It was coming from inside the cabin. Then the porch light flicked on. And the door slowly creaked open. The door opened just enough to show blackness inside, so dark it felt thick, like it wasn't just absence of light, but light being swallowed whole. I raised my flashlight and aimed it at the entrance, but the beam stopped cold a few feet in. It was like it couldn't touch what was beyond that threshold. Hello? I called out, my voice cracking slightly. No answer. The air around me had gone completely still. Not a single leaf moved. The smoke rising from the chimney no longer drifted, it simply hung in the air, frozen. I should have left. I should have turned around and never looked back. Instead, I stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked beneath me, dry, ancient. Like no one had walked across it in years. And yet, the lantern in the window flickered, casting shadows on the inside walls. I peeked through the cracked doorway, holding my breath. The cabin was furnished. Not just with bunks and chairs, there were photos on the walls. Old black and white pictures of smiling kids in Camp Echo Ridge shirts. Wooden name tags. A counselor's whistle hanging on a hook. I stepped inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed. Warm. Stuffy. The scent of burned wood mixed with lemon cleaner. A strange combination. Then, from somewhere deeper inside, footsteps. Small. Barefoot. Slow. They stopped just behind a partially open door at the end of the cabin. I took one step forward. The walkie clipped to my belt let out a burst of static. Josh, are you still out there? It was the real radio this time, Rachel, the morning shift counselor. I grabbed it, whispering, yes. I'm in cabin 6. Silence. Then, quietly, Josh, that cabin burned down in 2011. No one's been in there since the girl went missing. I looked up. The door at the end of the hall was now wide open. I didn't move. The door at the end of the cabin was wide open now, revealing only blackness beyond, darker than night. The kind of dark that pressed in around your eyes, even when they were wide open. Rachel's voice still echoed in my ear. The girl went missing. I wanted to ask who. When. How. But I already knew the answer would be worse than the silence. The air was thick with dust, but nothing had settled. It hung, motionless. Suspended, like the moment before a storm. I edged closer to the open door, flashlight trembling in my grip. Hello? I said. Is someone in there? No reply. Just that same, suffocating quiet. I raised the flashlight into the darkness, and the beam bent. Not around the wall, not past an object. It bent like it was being pulled downward. Like gravity was wrong on the other side of that threshold. My chest tightened. Then something stepped into view. It was a little girl. Maybe 9 or 10. Dirty blonde hair, pale skin, wearing a faded Camp Echo Ridge t-shirt. She stared at me with wide, glassy eyes that didn't blink. In her hands, she held a photo frame. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. She stepped forward, slow, almost floating, and held the frame up to me. Inside the frame was a picture of me. Standing right there. In that very hallway. Wearing the same clothes. Same expression. Behind me, in the photo, stood something tall, faceless, and black. I spun around. No one there. When I turned back, the girl was gone. And the photo frame lay shattered at my feet. The photo shards glittered on the wooden floor, reflecting my flashlight in twisted angles. My own face stared up at me from the largest piece, mouth slightly open, eyes wide with the exact fear I felt now. I knelt to pick it up, but the moment my fingers touched the glass, a sound filled the cabin. Not a voice. A humming. Childlike. Off-key. Slow. Like someone trying to remember the melody of a lullaby they hadn't heard in years. I turned toward the hallway again. Empty. But the humming grew louder, echoing through the cabin like it was bouncing off invisible walls. Then it started to shift, bending, becoming more guttural, more distorted. What started as a lullaby now sounded like a warning. I backed up toward the front door, but it was no longer open. It was gone. In its place was another hallway. Longer than it should have been, stretching into darkness where the entrance used to be. And at the end of it, a flickering yellow light. The same glow I'd followed through the woods. That's when I realized something else. The air smelled like burning wood. I turned toward the window. Black smoke curled up the glass from the outside. But nothing was on fire. I stumbled toward the nearest wall and slammed my fist against it, trying to wake myself up, to break through, to escape. And then I heard the voice again. Whispering. Inches from my ear. Don't leave. You just got here. I spun around, flashlight swinging, and caught a glimpse of something crawling across the ceiling. Thin limbs. Too long. Skin like ash. It smiled. I stumbled backward, slipping on the photo shards as the thing scurried overhead, its limbs creaking like dry branches. For a moment it hung still above me, head cocked unnaturally, like it was studying me, memorizing. Then it moved, fast. I bolted. Ran down the warped hallway that shouldn't have existed, heart hammering, lungs burning. The walls on either side began to shift. Bunks vanished. Doors melted into the wood. Every few feet, the lighting changed, daylight for a second, then darkness again, then flickering lantern glow like old film reels. This place wasn't just haunted. It was alive. At the end of the hall, I saw a door glowing faintly red around the edges, heat licking at the seams. Behind it, the sound of fire roared. My skin began to sweat, the air tightening like plastic wrap around my throat. Still, I pushed through. What I saw on the other side didn't make sense. The cabin was burning. But only in fragments. Like reality had split. The floor beneath my feet was charred and blackened, while the walls flickered between ash and untouched pine. In the center of the room stood the girl again, unmoving, untouched by the flames. She looked up at me, eyes sad. Then slowly raised her hand and pointed behind me. I turned. There it was again. The figure from the photograph. Tall. Skinless. Hollow-faced. It reached toward me, one long, bone-like hand outstretched, and I felt it not just on me, but inside me. Memories shifted. My first day at camp. The laughter of the kids. My own reflection. All of it, rewritten. And then, just before I lost control, the girl screamed, "Run!" And everything exploded into flame. The blast wasn't sound. It was light. White hot. Blinding. It swallowed the room, the cabin, the fire, and then it was gone. Just like that. I opened my eyes and found myself standing outside, on the gravel clearing where cabin 6 used to be. The trees around me were still. The stars above, clear. Crickets chirped in the distance like nothing had happened. My flashlight was still in my hand. The walkie-talkie buzzed to life. "Josh? You there? It's Rachel. Your shift's over. You didn't check in." I didn't answer right away. I turned slowly to look behind me. There was no cabin. Just the same scorched patch of dirt and gravel that had always been there. I stepped forward, knees weak, searching for any trace of what I'd seen. A piece of wood. Ash. The photo. But there was nothing. Just quiet. I finally raised the walkie. "I'm here," I whispered. "Sorry. Must have lost track of time." "Well, don't forget again," she said. "We've got parents coming for pickup this afternoon." I sat down on the ground, trying to breathe, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a hallucination. Stress. Summer heat. Too many ghost stories from counselors. But as I stood and turned to leave, something caught my eye near the tree line. A wooden sign. Old. Weathered. Half buried in moss. I walked over, pulled it free. Etched into the surface, beneath layers of rot, were the words, "Cabin 6, Girls." And beneath that, scratched into the wood by something jagged, "Still here." I carried the sign back to the security cabin, gripping it so tightly my knuckles ached. I didn't know why. Maybe I needed proof. Something to hold. Something real. But the longer I held it, the warmer it became, like it had absorbed the fire from that place. That thing. I wrapped it in a towel and shoved it in the supply closet. I didn't sleep that day. Instead, I sat in the security room and pulled up the surveillance footage. Our camera system is cheap and old. Grainy black and white footage stored for only 72 hours. I scrolled back to 1:17 a.m. The clearing where cabin 6 had once stood was dark, at first. Then, frame by frame, the light appeared. Not a flare. Not a flicker. A slow, pulsing glow, exactly where the porch would have been. Then, movement. A figure. Small. Childlike. I paused the frame and leaned in close. It was her. The same girl from the cabin. From the photo. Staring directly at the camera. Her eyes weren't scared. They were pleading. The next frame. Static. The rest of the recording had been wiped clean. I should have left then. Packed up. Vanished. But something in her face kept pulling at me. Not terror. Not malevolence. Warning. Later that night, just before my next shift, I checked the supply closet. The towel was gone. The wooden sign lay bare on the floor. And someone had scratched a new word into it. Tonight. I didn't want to go on shift that night. But I did. Something deep down told me if I didn't, if I ignored the sign, I'd be pulled back anyway. Maybe not to the clearing. Maybe not even here. But somewhere worse. I walked the perimeter slowly, flashlight off, the stars above giving just enough light to see. The kids were asleep. The cabin's quiet. Everything still. Until the air changed. You know that feeling when a storm is about to hit? That pressure in your ears, the way your skin tingles? That's what it felt like, except no clouds. No wind. Just presence. I passed the dining hall. Then the counselor's cabin. And there, just beyond the trail where the forest thickens, a flicker. I turned my head slowly. Cabin 6 was standing again. This time, it looked newer. As if freshly built. Fresh paint. Clean windows. But the light inside was the same soft amber glow. The door was open. No smoke. No fire. Just silence. I stepped inside. The hallway was different now. Shorter. Bunk beds on either side, perfectly made. Walls covered in hand-drawn pictures, kids' drawings. Flowers. Trees. Names I didn't recognize. And one photo tacked near the back door. I moved closer. It was me. Sitting in the security cabin. Smiling. Behind me, in the reflection of the window. She stood. The girl. Her eyes sad. Her lips barely moving. I turned. She was there now, standing at the end of the hallway. "You saw it, didn't you?" she whispered. "It followed you." "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely a breath. She shook her head slowly. "It doesn't have a name. Only doors." Then she pointed behind me. And the back door of the cabin creaked open, leading not to the woods, but to fire. The flames beyond the doorway didn't roar. They whispered. Soft, steady, like wind moving through dry grass. But what lay past that threshold wasn't forest fire, it was something older. Fire that didn't burn trees or wood, but memory. I stepped forward, unable to stop myself. The girl stayed behind, her face dimming in the cabin's glow. "You don't have to go," she said. I looked back at her. "But it keeps opening the door." She nodded. "Because someone always answers." The space beyond the doorway wasn't a room, it was shifting. A loop. I saw myself in it, walking the same hallway again and again. Different clothes. Different years. Sometimes smiling. Sometimes screaming. Then I saw others. People I didn't recognize. Staff. Campers. All disappearing through this same door. Each one choosing. Or maybe, being chosen. I felt the heat wrap around me. Not painful. Just heavy. Like memory becoming ash. The girl took one step closer. "You can close it. If you stay." That's when I realized what she was. Not a ghost. Not a victim. A seal. She had stayed to hold it shut, and her time was ending. Someone had to take her place. I reached into my pocket and felt something sharp. The photo. Still whole. Still warm. I nodded once. "I'll hold it." She smiled. A real, grateful smile. Then, for the first time, she turned away. And the cabin vanished. The next morning, Rachel found the gravel clearing as always. No cabin. No fire. But in the security cabin, my clipboard sat neatly on the desk. And pinned beside it, a new sign. Freshly carved. Cabin 6, occupied the end.